Hello, and welcome to Zap the Gender Pay Gap, the podcast series where we expose the elephant in the room. The elephant's name, the gender pay gap. I am coming to you from Memphis, Tennessee, located on the banks of the mighty Mississippi River. Nestled in the southwest corner of the state, Memphis is home to the blues, barbecue, and so much more. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker.
Thank you so very much for joining me for this episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. Look for me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and other platforms where you find your favorite podcast. I would love to be one of your favorites. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. I'd really appreciate that too. PayScale's Gender Pay Gap report has been published, and on the past several episodes, I have been sharing some of the findings with you. For instance, about the motherhood penalty. According to PayScale, the motherhood penalty is a phenomenon where a woman's pay decreases once she becomes a mother. But know what is more infuriating? Men who become fathers tend to earn more. Imagine that. On another episode, I revealed that based on the data, the gender pay gap is not due to a lack of education. The widest uncontrolled gap is for those with MBAs. Yes, women with MBAs take home 76 cents for every dollar that men with MBAs take home. Actually, PayScale makes this bold statement. Higher education does not lead to pay equity for women. Then the report goes on to say the gender pay gap sees minimal or no improvement at higher educational attainment levels compared to a high school degree. Now that set me back on my heels a bit. While associates, bachelor's, and master's degrees do close the pay gap slightly, those with MBAs, law degrees, and doctorates see a wider controlled pay gap. Guess what? This year, the gender pay gap does not close for any educational degrees, not even law degrees. Talk about a bombshell. Attorneys get caught too. Yes, attorneys, they get caught too. But you may be thinking to yourself, they know the law. Yes, attorneys know the law, and attorneys, they get caught too. Although women with law degrees see some or one of the smaller uncontrolled gender pay gaps, they still earn 88 cents on the dollar, which means that on average, they earn 12% less than their male counterparts with law degrees. More about that later, but first, let's do a refresh. PayScale reports findings based on what is called the uncontrolled and controlled gender pay gap, and they analyze them in a number of ways, including by parent status, remote work status, education, age, race, job level, and a number of other categories, as well as the top jobs where the gender pay gap is the widest. And that's the case even when all pay factors are controlled. To give you a brief overview, here are the findings from the PayScale Gender Pay Gap Report. Number one, the pay gap between what women and men are paid persists year over year, indicating that the reasons the gender pay gap for this gender pay gap that they are systemic. Since PayScale started tracking the gender pay gap, the difference between the earnings of men and women has shrunk, but only by an infinitesimal amount each year. In 2023, the gender pay gap didn't shrink at all. Number two, the uncontrolled gender pay gap tells us that the distribution of high-earning, prestigious jobs in society favors men, while the presence of the controlled gender pay gap tells us that at least some women are still being paid less than men, even when doing the same jobs. Number three, the gender pay gap persists even when men and women have the same education. Number four, The gap is wider for women who are parents and for women who work from home. Number five, the gender pay gap also widens as women age and progress in their careers. Number six, it is wider for women in certain occupations and industries, as well as in some states and metro areas. And number seven, it's a little bit of good news, and it's this: the gender pay gap has narrowed slightly for women of color. Most of the findings were old news in that it was a repeat of stats and facts that I had heard before. But the revelation that the gender pay gap is not due to a lack of education, that set me back on my heels a bit. And on top of that, to realize that attorneys get caught in the gender pay gap too, that was a shocker. The fact that women with law degrees see one of the smaller, uncontrolled gender pay gaps at first blush seems like good news. But when you pull back the curtain and see that it is 88 cents on the dollar, the reality is that they still earn, on average, 12% less than their male counterparts with law degrees. Now, legislation has been enacted by Congress promoting equal pay for equal work for a while now, but these laws didn't come about by accident or out of the goodness of the heart of the powers that be. Advocates like Esther Peterson, who was presidential advisor to President John F. Kennedy, was instrumental in us passing the Equal Pay Act of 1963. And you know what? Here we are today, and women still are not even. Check out season 2, episode 7 of this podcast to hear about women who have advocated for equal pay. The work they did then helped us get to where we are today. But guess what? As I said before, women still aren't even. No matter how you slice and dice the data, the findings confirm that women continue to be underpaid compared to their male counterparts, regardless of educational level. I find this appalling. So count me in as one of those advocating for equal pay for equal work by continuing to expose this elephant in the room that I've named the gender pay gap, to dispose and disclose some previously unknown information, some pertinent facts about the impact that this elephant is making on a woman's pay. And as you discovered today, women with law degrees earn 88 cents on the dollar compared to their male counterparts with law degrees. And then to identify ways to dispose of this elephant as well as its effects. Now, since PayScale went to all the trouble to conduct and publish their report, it only seems fitting that I share the findings. I also realize that just because the report has been published, some women, should I say most women, are probably not aware of these alarming facts. I do not want you to be ignorant, nor do I want you to be misinformed. So I have taken it upon myself to get this information on the radar of as many women and decision makers as possible. I have yet to talk with a woman who is okay with being underpaid. She may not know how to fix it or what to do about it, but I do. That is why I have made it my mission to show women how to find and fix their pay gap, and do so for every woman who will listen and has the courage to act. Needless to say, I was shocked to find out that attorneys get caught in the gender pay gap too. But you know what is more shocking? That a lot of women are trapped in the gender pay gap and they don't even know it. So I'm asking for your help. How? By getting the word out. One way to do that is by sharing this podcast with women and the people who love them. Will you help me do that? If so, I'd greatly appreciate it. And perhaps you are ready to take steps to find and fix your gender pay gap. If that's the case, I'd be happy to assist you with that. To set up a call to find out how I can show you how to close your pay gap and determine if we are a good fit, message me. Go to gwendolynjtucker.com and click on contact. A link is in the description below. You can reach out to me there. Women, you work hard for your money. I can show you how to take home all of it. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of my podcast. Since we're talking about the gender pay gap and the law, Plan to join me next time as I discuss recent laws enacted around pay transparency. You don't want to miss it. If you like what you hear here, please invite a woman in your world to listen in too. If you missed a previous episode, just take a listen. Look for me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and other platforms where you find your favorite podcasts. I would love to be one of your favorites. I look forward to seeing you here next Wednesday at noon Central Standard Time. Until then, please be well.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Zap the Gender Pay Gap. Please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow me wherever you get your favorite podcast. I am your host, Gwendolyn Tucker. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.